Hello, mate to Thrive Nation. Got a very special guest on the show today. He's one of my favorite thought leaders on thinking and decision making. He is a professor of psychology and behavioral economics at Duke University and just love his books over many, many years. So I really want to welcome Dan Ariely to the show.
Thank you very much. Lovely to be here.
Brilliant. I'm going to give you a story and I'm going to sort of set that lens that we can go through because I think we could talk about anything and everything with your type of knowledge and just your type of amazing ability to analyze and condense and communicate. I've been a physician for 25 years, Dan, and over the last 4 years, I've needed to see my own psychologist and get some counseling because of compassion fatigue, and mainly because I'm stuck in a sick care model, seeing people that are coming to me with an issue, with a disease, with a problem, and then I'm treating them. And then they're often coming back with the same problem just because they haven't changed their lifestyles or they haven't changed their thinking or they haven't changed their relationships in their life. And so we've tried to develop a model called sustainable transformation. And it was my belief to try and do it with corporate leaders, with executives, with business leaders, with entrepreneurs to try and change the way medicine's been done from a sick care model to a healthcare and preventative model. And so I really want to talk about this because the stats, and this is not for you, but just for the audience, how sick people are out there and how we can put a sort of a basic frame in the next 60 minutes on trying to help people with a preventative, proactive, personal and performance enhancing model. And, just in South Africa now, 50% of children have a chronic disease, the same as America. 13% of South African children are obese, which is crazy. Only 7% of Americans are healthy. Only 15% of South Africans are healthy by basic data, health data. So we have a crisis and it's called chronic disease, and it's exponentially increasing, and we're losing this war, or we're losing this battle against chronic disease. And so my question to you to start off with is, how, with your books that you've written and the misinformation out there, is how do we address this process of changing people's thinking, changing the way they get information to help them and not convince them, but facilitate a process of staying humble in order to change this wave of chronic disease?
Yeah. So first of all, I'll say something, I don't mean to be funny, but it's not growing exponentially because the numbers are so high. There's almost no place for growth in terms of disease. So it's a very sad statement that so many of us are not well in all kinds of things. And I think that what we need to recognize is that this is what we're doing to ourselves, right? We have created a temptation economy. And it has all kinds of reasons why we have a temptation economy. But you have a plan of what you want to eat, and you make a shopping list, and then you go to the supermarket. But the supermarket has a different plan. And the supermarket controls the environment. And they decide what to put at the end of aisle and what to put by the cashier and so on. And what's easier for them? To sell a cookie or a tomato? A cookie works on our emotions. Like, if you think about it, somebody designed every cookie. And somebody designed every cookie with a particular goal, to make you want to eat one, and then another one, and not being able to stop. And they're good at their job. And if you think about this, we, like from a behavioral economics perspective, we think about people as walking down through life, and everybody wants a piece of you. Everybody wants some of your time, money, attention, and so on. Everybody wants to. Every coffee shop wants you to buy another croissant, and every ad wants you to buy another thing. And yes, we manage to fight temptation a lot, but we also fail a lot. And that's how society is working. Most of the success of the companies around us, the things that make our environment, it's not connected to our long-term success. In fact, it's connected to our short-term failure. Yeah. And ask yourself, who really cares about your long-term well-being?
No,
maybe you think your spouse, or maybe your parents, or maybe you think it's religion or the state, but whatever it is, these are not actors who are in our environment. And our environment is very, very tempting. So
So let me just interject there. If a patient comes in, they change their diet, they know what to do, they realize the cookie's causing issues, they realize that Big Food probably is not a benevolent organization, doesn't have their best interests at heart. Yet 6 months later, they've stopped with the irritable bowel syndrome now, they've taken my supplements or medication, they're much better. And then 6 months later, they just go back to their old ways because they go to the supermarket and there's a bunch of new cookies that their friends have told them about. And then the cycle perpetuates again and again.
Yeah. So let's admit a couple of things. First of all, it's very too easy to say us versus them. But the fact is that we all fail. If we had a way to ask people questions, I would say, how many of you in the last month slept less than you think you should? And I'm guessing everybody would raise their hand. And then if we ask the question, and how many of you in the last month ate more do you think you should? And texted while driving, and the list can go on and on and on. The reality is that those fights are very, very tough. And if you ask, what is it that brings good behavioral change? It's not just motivation. We all say we don't want to text and drive, we want to sleep better and so on. We need to change our environment. If I came to each one of you, each one of the people listening to this, I came to each of you in the morning, every morning, with a fresh tray of croissant and muffins. I'm not saying you would fail every day, but I'm willing to bet at the end of the year you'll be less healthy.
Yeah,
and the power that we have is not to see the muffin and reject it. The power that we have is not to have it in our environment.
Sure, that's a bit of a change that almost speaks about the Stanford prison experiment of the environment and the culture we're in is as important, if not you saying more important, than your confidence or your ability to say, hang on, actually, I've got a goal to stay healthy. I've got, my data that's very important to me. And because of that data, my goals, my intrinsic motivation is as or less important than the culture and the environment.
That's right. So it's very hard to change people, much easier to change the environment. So what does that mean? Let's think about money. Getting people to make better decisions about money every time when they come to think about spending, to say, what am I giving up? What am I getting? Is this worth it? It's not. Very tough. On the other hand, giving you an electronic wallet that tells you how much money you have left, tells you if you're over budget, getting your spouse to be aware of the choices you're making, changes the environment, and therefore people make better decisions. If you take the same person, let's go to the food domain, and you put them in a buffet, they will not make good choices.
Yeah, they eat more, 18% more. The research shows that's just being at a buffet versus a la carte.
Yeah. So the question is, can we change our environment? And the first thing to do is to recognize that the environment matters. Because if you say it's all about me, you can say, I can go to a buffet and I can control myself. If you say, no, I need to control it, therefore I'm not going to go to a buffet, that's the key. So can we change people? Very tough. Not impossible, but very tough. We can create habits and so on. Can we change the environment? Much easier. So the first thing I would do is I would say, think about what each and every one of us can do to change our environment. And there could be simple things. Like when we open the refrigerator, we look at eye level to see what we have, and those are the things that pop to mind. What's usually at eye level? Not the fruits and vegetables. The fruits and vegetables are usually at some drawer, usually opaque, usually at the bottom, that requires more work. Put the unhealthy stuff in that drawer and put the healthier stuff at eye level. Now people say, but this drawer is designed for high humidity and it's designed for colder temperature. True, but you're not opening it. So, we really need to understand that we eventually do what's easy. I'll give you an example. You ask people if they like apples. Most people say yes. You put a plate of apples, nobody eats them. You cut them into quarters, they disappear. What's the difference? A little easier to eat a quarter of an apple. Now, it's not that people say, oh, I just want half. No, people eat the whole apple, but much easier to eat it in slices. So easy, we need to figure out, right now society has developed that the easiest thing to do is the unhealthy thing. What we need to do is to make the healthy thing easier. Now, could we ever make a salad as easy to make as Pop-Tarts? No. But can we change the balance? Absolutely, yes.
But it seems like it's been orchestrated against us, Prof. I mean, if you think about big food, using the addictive model from the 85, 86, 87, looking at using food scientists to light up different parts of the brain to make it very addictive, starting with baby formula that's 52% sugar. It seems like the intention is not integrous. It seems like we cannot trust big food. And if we cannot trust these people in terms of what they're doing to our physiology, there's no psychological safety, or there's no safety to say, hang on, is this healthy? Isn't this healthy? Do they have shareholders' interests at heart? What is their intention? That seems to have changed significantly in possibly, I don't know, the last 120 years or the industrial age.
Yeah, so I usually, my first go-to strategy is to assume stupidity and not bad intentions. So, we had a long period of time that we thought that sugar was okay and fat was our enemy. Then we changed our opinion, but food already had a path of how it's being created. And, the subsidies on corn and the amount of corn out there, like we created a machinery that is going in one direction. And I don't think there's a food engineer out there that sits and says, let me get people to be obese, but they say, my cookies is slightly better than yours, I want you to have a better market share, and let me try and do that. But I want to make the story slightly more complex. And I want to tell you about the study we did with diabetes patients. And we basically looked at a large group of diabetes patients, and we said some of these people are managing their A1C better, and some don't manage their A1C so well. What separates them? And you can think about A1C as kind of the 3 months historical measure of how well you're managing your blood glucose level. You can think of it as equivalent to managing your diet and so on. What separates the people who are good at this from the people who are not so good at this? So we asked lots of questions. Do people that understand diabetes better manage their A1C better? No. Do people that understand how to measure blood sugar level do better? No. Do people that understand the side effects do better? No. Anyway, all the answers were no, 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 no. The only thing that made a difference was the number of times a week they reported that they feel a break point. Now, what's a break point? We all have a stressful life. We all have a lot to do. And stress accumulates throughout the day. It starts with waking up the kids, and then something from the boss, and then the news, and stress accumulates through the day. And sometimes we get to a situation where we say, I don't care about the future. I don't care, I just want something happy now. And we open the freezer, and the easiest, cheapest way to gain happiness is unhealthy food. That's just a part of the story of the food industrial revolution. So we all have this, but people with diabetes are actually having even a harder time than the rest of us. Why? Because we manage kids and bosses, and they also manage diabetes. Can I eat this cookie? Can't I eat this cookie? When do I measure my blood glucose level? When do I take insulin? Like their level of management is much higher. And Baumeister connects this. He says it's like self-control is like a muscle. You take a weight and you lift it. The weight doesn't change, but at some point you break. At some point you can no longer continue. And the idea is that willpower is a little bit like this. we fight temptation, we fight temptation, we fight. At some point we say, I don't care, I don't care, I'm not fighting anymore, give me some happiness now. Now what we found is that the number of times that this happens a week is the predictor of whether people are able or not able to manage their A1C. Now, why is this important? When we think about behavior, we usually think about the average behavior, and that's important. But there are lots of things where we need to think not about the average behavior, we need to think about the outlier. Especially with weight, you can be good 5 days a week and destroy everything you've gained with a couple of donuts on the 6th, right? It's not that a day is binary, but we know that if people would cut 200 calories a day from their diet, long term it will be incredible. Like you say, 200, it's easy. It's easy on the day. It's very hard to do it consistently because the issue is consistency. Now, not all diseases are like that, but there are a lot of things that we shouldn't think just about the average behavior, but we should think about the outliers. And what we should do is we should prepare people to deal with those moments of outliers. So how many of us, on average, are acting quite well? But from time to time at midnight, something happened and we destroy a whole week's of work in a couple of hours, and then we feel bad about ourselves and so on. So I think we need to really come up with strategies for these. Now, if I have a bad feeling at midnight and I open the freezer, the game is lost, right? I've lost it.
That's true.
The question is, what do you do in advance? And you can't wait for that moment to come up with a strategy. That moment your mind is not thinking, oh, let me think about what I can do. You have to develop a go-to strategy instead, to basically say, when you recognize stressful eating, emotional eating, when you recognize something like this, yes, you can do this emotional eating, but here's another alternative.
So I just want to summarize. So you're basically saying because of distress, and I use that distress or, the stress that's on people these days is it depletes their energy. And because of a lack of energy, your ability and your willpower is reduced to make the correct decisions. That's the first thing. So it's an energy problem. And if you're sitting on the couch watching Netflix and eating Doritos, it's because there's energy available. You're tired, you're exhausted, you've had a stressful day. And so this is the easiest thing that you can do. You're not going to go get up and cook something, which is going to take time and energy again. And then secondly is that you need a blueprint for those times. Because if you don't have a blueprint and a plan, you're going to go and do the easiest thing. And that is just human nature because you're tired and exhausted. So maybe a part of your brain says, listen, go for the Doritos or the chocolate. There's calories. You're going to feel better. Sit on the couch instead of actually then sticking to your blueprint there. So would you say those are the two sort of big sort of pillars of what's happening out there where people cannot make the right decisions? And that's what I love about your book, is that what makes rational people, believe irrational things is that, hang on, I've stopped this, I've changed my diet, I'm healthy, I'm strong, my sex life is good, my career is good, my mental performance is good, and then 6 months later, I'm back to the old ways.
Yeah. So I think that the first thing to recognize is how powerful the environment is. We are not designing restaurants and supermarkets. They have been designed for a different purpose. And they were designed to take advantage of us. And it's a war. It's a war between us and them. That's the first thing to recognize. And we need to create rules for what we do and what we don't do. I don't know where you stand on religion, but the way religion works to change behavior is it gives you do and don't do. It gives you very clear rules of do and don't do. I'm talking Catholics, Jewish, I'm not Protestant. Anyway, but it's like do and don't do. And the thing about do and don't do is that it's easy. You know where you are. So, stopping smoking is relatively easy because you're either a smoker or not. Dieting is very, very tough. When are you not a dieter? It's always one spoonful or two more spoonful and so on. So we need to understand that the environment matters. It's a fight, and we need to create our own rules. For example, a relatively easy rule is to say no sugary drinks. Or you could say no dessert aside from Friday. But the rules have to be very clear. The rules have to be clear. Think about Alcoholics Anonymous. They don't say it's okay to have half a glass.
Yeah.
Why? Because if they said that, you would say, oh yes, this was the half a glass for yesterday, and I'll do the half a glass for tomorrow and for next week now, and we will cheat ourselves. We need rules where we can't cheat ourselves. That's one. Another thing to understand is the power of adaptation. When we think about sacrifices right now, they seem to us very tough. Oh, I love sugar, I love salt, I'm doing this. 6 weeks from now, we'll be a different person. Now, if you think to yourself, let's take salt. If you say, life without salt is not worth living. True for today, maybe for you. But if you reduced your salt consumption by half, in 6 weeks, you will be a different person. Now, when people think about sacrificing salt, they say, I need to sacrifice it forever. No, you'll be a different person. So the environment matters. We need to fight it. We need to create rules. And we need to understand that it's okay to do things for a while until we get used to them.
Okay.
Then the other thing that is working against us is this energy, willpower. We need to create a blueprint for alternatives. We can't let the environment, take us away into its direction. And the last thing I would say, and this is a belief, I don't have the data for this, I think we need to figure out a way to get on the wagon again. So imagine that I don't know what, I'm trying to adhere to a specific diet. And I fail. I go to some friend's house and I have a little bit too much to drink, and they have this amazing dessert, and I have one bite and then I have a whole thing. And anyway, I fail. A very simple thing to do is to think about what's called the what the hell effect. I'm not a dieter, I might as well enjoy it. Right? The what the hell effect goes back also to religion, to Calvinism, where the idea is that if I'm a bad person, why would I not just continue in making bad decisions? I'm going to hell anyway, I might as well enjoy it. So the more strict we are, interestingly, the more we feel that we are bad people. And because of that, if I'm not a dieter, I'm a failure, I might as well have another cake. And I think what we need is a cleansing process. So here's my suggestion, untested. If you have fallen off the wagon, you had a rule and this, and one day you failed, expected. Don't just go back to your regular self the next day. The next day, pick a penalty and do that penalty. For example, you could say, if I failed, the next day I'm drinking 2 green juices before lunch, or I'm something, I'm running 5K, or I'm doing something to make up for that. Okay. And I think this process is important, because if you think that it's not just your diet, or it's not just the medication, if you think of yourself as a failure, why would you all of a sudden try, I'm going to fail again? So I think that this extra exercise of trying to pay penance, like think about the Catholic confession, right? You don't say, I made something bad. No, I have to talk to the priest, say 1,000 times Hail Mary, give some money to the church. I have to do all kinds of things. I think it's an important psychological mechanism to make amends. So what I recommend to everybody is to come up with your own penance mechanism.
Okay.
I did this for 3 years with my cousin, where we had very clear rules about our diet. We said dessert only on Friday, once a week. We said dark chocolate over 75% is okay. We said intermittent fasting and no additive sugar, no soft drinks and not additive sugar. And every time we reported once a week, which was great because we also got to connect more. When we failed, we reported it immediately, and the other person could give us a healthy makeup. So, okay, run an extra this, drink this, today only salad. I even had to do Pilates one time. But it had a couple of mechanisms. There was a commitment device, right? I committed to her and she committed to me. There was awareness, I had to report and so on. And the punishment was actually very effective because what it created is this, okay, I did something bad, I made up for it, I'm a good person.
It didn't change your identity, it changed just your action and your behavior.
Right.
But you had someone around you, and talking about community, you had someone who you trusted, and there was safety there to express yourself. And is that not a big part of the problem now? That is, people don't have confidence in themselves or their families or their friends to treat them in an unconditional love way to ensure that there's safety there. So what do you think that's been a big part of the problem, is that there's a lot of isolation, guilt, and shame. And like you said, if you stay in that isolation and that guilt and that shame, well, then you just identify with that and you carry on with that bad behavior.
Yeah. So, I wrote a couple of books, but the last book was called Misbelief. It's about conspiracy theories, really, or all kinds of alternative narratives. But the start of this book is to basically say what causes normal people to start believing irrational things. And it turns out that the starting condition is stress. And I don't mean the stress of saying, gee, I have so much email, I'm not sure how I'll be able to go through it. It's the kind of stress that I don't understand the world. Why am I sick? Why am I gaining weight? Why did I lose my job? That's the thing. But interestingly, the standard immunity against stress is what we call resilience. And if you have more resilience, bring it on. Right? If I feel that I have a loving community, supporting community, amazing romantic relationship, my kids love me, stress just drops off. The moment our resilience goes down, now every stressful event is much more salient. And we have to recognize that stress is at the high levels. Think about even just what we talked about before this started. You told me that in South Africa these days, electricity is not very predictable. Yeah. That's the kind of stress. I know you have different levels, right? Level 1 to the kind of numbers. There's a lot of stress. When will it go back? Will I have hot water? And so on. Unpredictable. So the reason we have low resilience is we spend less time with friends, as a general trend, even before COVID. In the US at least, even at work, there are lots of topics they ask us not to talk about. Don't talk about romantic life, don't talk about politics. So our friends at work are less of friends. We meet less with our extended family. And interestingly, we substitute real friends for social media friends. And interestingly, as economic inequality increases, resilience goes down. And why is that? It's because if even at the level of your neighborhood, there's inequality, you don't feel as comfortable asking for help. So we're at a period of high stress and period of low resilience. And we're not doing well. Like our emotional well-being is not so high. But by the way, if you look at people with depression, they eat lots of sugar. They get less reward in their brains, and they make up for it. One of my psychiatrist friends, he's the guy who did research on this. He said he used to offer his clients coffee, and he was shocked with how much sugar they put on. And then then he did the research on this and so on. But if you ask, where are we getting our well-being? The truth is, we're not getting a lot of it. I'll give you something else about this. The opioid epidemic in the US. They estimated about 500,000 people got overdosed and died. It's a big number. But of course, opioids are not just about physical pain. They also numb emotional pain. We say, these people shouldn't take opioids. That's true. But these people are really miserable. These are people who are not happy, satisfied emotionally. They have some pain physically. All of these pains add together. Somebody who is have emotional pain and physical pain, their pain is just higher. Those things combine. So we're not doing well emotionally. And because of that, everything, we need some happiness. And we can blame the cookie manufacturers, and of course they deserve some blame, but also our need for cookies is higher because life is just not as good. So we need to think about that as well.
Yeah, and I think, Dan, I'm from the island of Cyprus. My parents came here in the early 60s, and I see how they live in the villages, and everybody knows each other. They got good friends, they got close friends, they got a strong network. Their kids are free to run around. The neighbors know them. Their kids know their neighbors. And it almost sometimes seems in a modern day city, I've got to go and live in a village with my family so that my kids have, some psychological safety there. And that I'm not fighting them to tell them about sugary cereals. And my daughter says to me, she's 8, she says, yeah, but everybody else at school has the cereals. And she says, well, my 5 friends have got Instagram on their on their phones, and they all got phones. And now I'm fighting the environment. And so the very first thing you said is sometimes to live in this environment, everything becomes an area of debate, of conflict. And she doesn't know, her grandparents were overseas, and my sister's in Durban, and my brother-in-law's in Cyprus. And so now her community is very different to the way I was brought up. And so her trust in relationships and her ability to have healthy emotional connections is not there. And so it's a difficult environment.
That's right. Have you read this book by Dan Buettner on the blue zones?
The blue zones, yeah, absolutely. We talk a lot about it in our community and how important it is. The reality is, what are you going to do staying in a city if you're not going to live in a blue zone? I mean, we go there, we have a wonderful time in Cyprus, and there's lots of people there, and it's good food, and you're living off the land, and there's no Wi-Fi, but you come back to a real situation, and you come back to a modern day city. And so the decision is almost binary there. It's difficult.
Yeah. So Dan Buettner is a National Geographic discoverer, and he kind of identified those blue zones where people live the healthiest over 100. He also has this for happiness, which is different than health. But and there's a couple of things there, and they're intertwined. So it's hard to separate them, right? It's not a good experiment. But these people are much more social. They don't exercise, but they live in movement. Yeah. They walk everywhere, right? So they don't go to the gym, but they go to the market and they come back. They have much more social time, and they drink a little bit of alcohol, but they drink it socially. It's not that they sit and they sit and they chat and they have this. Very little meat, little fish. Generally low amount of calorie consumed. I don't think like you can go and visit a blue zone, but I think what we need to do is to figure out. We can't take our cities and make them a blue zone. That's too much. But if we each thought about these principles and we say, what can we bring to that environment? What can I bring there? Meat, fish, lower calorie intake, walking more, friends, a glass of wine. Like what can I, what can I do? And I think if we did this, we would all find places where we could do improvements. I had this idea a long time ago. We never got to act on it, but I called it the invisible home gym. And the idea was, I got this idea when I had kids, and I thought that picking up your kids is an exercise. You know, why not? Why not think of it as an exercise and do that? And Ellen Langer has this amazing paper where she told women who clean rooms in hotels, she told them this is exercise.
Yeah.
And they lost more weight.
Yeah. Their numbers improved, their biochemical factors improved, their hormones improved, their insulin improved, their glucose improved.
That's right. And I suspect that it wasn't just the knowledge. I suspect they did things differently. So they, you know, pushed the sheets differently. Like, you know, so if you think about the invisible home gym, and you say, let me think about the things I'm doing, can I do them more with movement? Can I do them more with on the way? Can I make folding laundry a bit more physically strenuous? You know, put the thing up and put it down, or so on. Yeah. I have a ceremony of putting my socks on. I stand on one leg. I try to do like the yoga pose, and so on. You know, I think there's a lot of things that we like. Each of them small, each of them not enough, but we need to do it. And the other thing we need to figure out is what works for us. So you look incredibly fit. I don't know what you do for exercise, but for me, I used to be on the road 300 days a year, pre-COVID. And I would get to some hotel in some city late at night. Usually the gym was closed and I didn't know what to do. And there was a long period I didn't do any exercise. And then I discovered running. Now, I knew that running existed, but I discovered running. I discovered that even if I get to some hotel at 10 p.m., as long as I have sneakers and running shorts, and it's not raining too hard, or ideally not raining, I can go for a run in that city, and I can learn the few streets next to the hotel, and that's great. So I get to learn a bit of the city. I'm not dependent on the gym hours. I don't have to carry much with me for this. So, you know, what is the kind of movement? Even don't call it exercise. What are the kind of movements that fits better with our lives? And people with kids are different than people without kids. People who are morning people are different than evening people, and people that work from home are different than people that take the bus and have cars and so on. But imagine each of us basically said, here's my life. Where in my day can I make a delta improvement? Gotcha. Slightly less food, slightly healthier food consumption, slightly more movement, and then try to make this into a habit.
But it seems like that's all going to be based on a blueprint and a plan. And, you know, many people don't have financial plans. Many people do. That's changed significantly. But people don't seem to have a health plan or performance plan. They need someone to help them with their own data and their own blueprint, because obviously they're unique individuals. Do you think, like, a data-centric approach, we run this with our corporates and our business leaders, we found data and wearable technology has made it personal, and people have a goal. They've got a health coach around them, surrounding them, encouraging them, you know, getting them back on the horse and getting them back on the wagon, which is what you said. How important do you think it is to, number one, have that data and that blueprint?
So I think that data by itself doesn't do much. And I'll give you an example: sleep data.
Yeah.
I took anybody and I gave them the sleep data for the last 30 years. They would have no idea what to do with it.
Yeah.
You know, what I need to tell people is to say, try and put the shades down, see how it works for you, put the mask on, make the room quiet, make the room dark, you know, pillow under your knees, like try different things. Lavender smell seems to help some people. But it's not, data does not become useful. It takes a lot of work to make data useful. Because what you need to do is to say what this data suggests is you should do this change. It's not a natural thing. Oh, data, I see what I'm doing wrong. And the change that you want is a change that is possible and easy and so on, right? If you ask me today, here's my data from my activity, what kind of physical activity should you do? You don't know. There's a level out there. Now, I think the data, I also have this ring, and I check how I slept, and sometimes there's interesting insights. But mostly, I think that we need a focus on interventions and not on data. I think that you can go to almost everybody, not look at their data, and give them some simple suggestions of things they should be doing.
Even in your book, Dan, you said hopefully helpful, because to change people and help people is a difficult thing. And I mean, if we look at this, the interventions often have to be based on something. Either it's intrinsic motivation, extrinsic, maybe they've got to pay a penalty, or they've got to get a fine, they've got to pay money, or there's got to be a consequence for not doing those, or they've got to report back to their health coach or their community. It seems we've got to drill like deeper and deeper. Is you know what to do. The question is, why aren't you doing it? Now you know why you're not doing it. Now, how do we change that? Okay, well, one of the biggest things is environment. But now you've got a wife and you've got a kid, and they want the crisp in there and they want the chocolate in there. Now to change the environment's difficult. Now we've got to drill deeper down and say, well, my wife, Helen, you love me, I love you. We want to have a healthy relationship for a long time and not get sickness. Let's come to agreement on how we can support each other with our eating habits and being accountable, or to our children. So then it comes back down to community. And then community is, what is my purpose in the family? Oh, my purpose is to love, lead, and protect my daughter. Okay, so I'm a safe place now. So now she feels safer. So now she's not going to go and binge eat the chocolate. It seems like we've got to drill all the way down to the root level to help people manage in a modern day city.
So your description of it is correct and depressing. And why is it correct and depressing? Is because you're presenting the kind of the correct thing. But let me give you a different perspective. I think it is surprising how few people are obese. Now, it sounds strange, like, what do you mean few people are obese? Most of us eat too much. Almost everybody deserves to be obese. Fewer people are obese than they need to. If you just look at input, caloric input, our bodies are quite amazing. They have tolerance. They can make up for things. You described all the points of failures. And I think you're right. In an ideal world, we would fix all of those things. We can go quite a long way by fixing even part of the picture. So you're saying, do we have to fix all of this? No. Let's fix part of it. Let's start by increasing sleep. Let's start by increasing social support. Let's start by increasing simple movement throughout the day. And let's adopt some simple habits. For example, you're on the phone, walk while you're on the phone, talking. It's a little harder to do on video calls, but you can say, let's look at where you could do, and don't look at fixing things. It's just too much. Think about what is the next easiest step to do that would lead to a health improvement. Do that for a couple of months. Get it into your system. And then think about what's the next one. And and some of those are going to be easier than you think. I think cutting sugary drinks. If I remember correctly, in South Africa, lots of people drink very sugary coffee. I remember You know,
Not like Europe. Europe, they like the bitter taste. They don't put a lot of
that's right.
sugar. Here, they use a lot of sugar.
Yeah. Move, switch to Americano, switch to espresso. Try it for 2 months. It's not forever. It's not this. I suspect that, I think there's a lot of small things that we could do that would make a big difference. We have a long time to live. We don't need to fix everything right now. We don't have to fix everything. Every step is a good step, and it's a long, what I also don't want people to do is to feel like they're failing. Yeah. If you look at New Year resolutions, the number of New Year resolutions that people violate by the end of January is amazing. But a lot of it is because they're too extreme. They're not reasonable. So what would be reasonable New Year resolutions? What would be a reasonable next step? And let me just tell you one last thing. I don't know if you know, but I created a weight loss program that is based on a scale with no display. Why a scale with no display? Because we learned that the display actually makes things worse. It's really good to stand up on a scale every morning, not good to stand up on a scale every night. Not because we weigh more, because if we stand on a scale in the morning, we eat a little bit less for breakfast. We stand on a scale at night, we just go to bed, by the morning we forgot the whole thing.
Wow, is that data oriented? Is that research?
Yeah, a lot of data, yeah. We also know that weight fluctuates. People with normal BMI, maybe 2 pounds, pound and a half to 2 pounds a day. People who are morbidly obese, 8 pounds a day. This fluctuation, when weight goes up, it's very unpleasant. When it goes down, it's slightly happy. So people, even if somebody doesn't change their weight, very unpleasant, slightly happy. Very unpleasant, on average, not a good feeling. And finally, the body reacts very slowly. You start the diet, it will take 2 weeks before the results show up. It's very confusing. You go on a diet for 4 days, you say, where are the results? And your weight went up by half a pound. Then you eat cheesecake, then your weight goes down. You say, what's happening here? Where are the laws of physics? So we created a weight with no display, a scale with no display. And we show people on an app, but we show the trends, going up a lot, up a little, nothing happened, down a little. Now, do we need 5 trends or 4? 5 are high a lot, high a little, nothing happened, down a little, down a lot. Or 4, up a little, up a lot, up a little, down a little, down a lot. Do we need the nothing bad happens? It turns out the answer is yes, in a big way. Why is it so important to have nothing bad happens? And not only to have it, but to celebrate it. Imagine 52 weeks, a year. Somebody loses weight 12 weeks and nothing bad happened for 40 weeks. Good year or bad year?
Yeah, it's a good year.
It's an amazing year. It almost never happens, right? It's a 3 sigma year. But unless you think that nothing bad happened is success, you would feel that you have failed most of the time. Now, why am I telling you this? Because I think that one of the most important elements in our journey for health is our own motivation. Here we are, little soldiers, need to fight temptation all the time. How do we create that motivation? And for me, the feeling of success is an important part of that motivation. So, do I care that people know exactly their weight? No, I don't care. I care about behavioral change. And I'm coming at it from the perspective of the individual, and I say, the struggle for health is basically a losing proposition. We're not going to win. We're going to slow down decay a little bit. But we're not going to win. We're not going to live forever. If you have diabetes, it's only going to get worse. You can slow it down. Sure. White hair, we only get more of it. It's not going to change.
It's hard, Dan, because I'm picturing myself at 81, reverse engineering this process of being strong, being fit, not being the 81-year-old that my father was or my grandfather was, being able to have good relationships, still working, still outworking my purpose, still.
I'm hoping for all of this for you, for all of us. But the comparison, at age 81, you'll be worse than at age 71, and
The degradation is still there, but I still might be fully functional and still
That's
performing.
right. Absolutely, absolutely. But I'm just saying, we are going to get worse. And when you think about how do we get people to feel motivated, I think we need to think about that resource. I think if people feel that they're a failure and they're not succeeding, like, oh, I need to do this 10 thing, and if I don't do this and this, I'm a failure. No, we need to make sure that we feel that we are good soldiers, that we're able to, that we've made progress with this year, zero deterioration.
So I got you. So overall picture is we're getting worse and we're degrading, but we need micro wins along the way and these little areas of success that keep us motivated. Although the long-term back picture is at 81, I'm not going to be the same as when I was 50.
That's right. And for me, basically saying congratulations, this year I'm just the same as last year, that's great success. We don't naturally think of it as great success, but it is great success. So I think we need to create a situation where our soldiers fighting for better health feel successful and motivated. So because of that, I think it's okay to take small challenges. It's okay to feel progress. In fact, that's what we want to do.
Got you. So now you've challenged me that, chronic disease is not exponentially increasing. Maybe since, the last 25 years in medicine, it's just seemed like more and more. But if only 7% of, Americans are healthy and only 15% of South Africans are healthy by 5 basic metrics, what does it look like in the future, 2030? I mean, as a behavioral, professor of economics and science, I mean, what is going to happen to humanity? I mean, if fertility rates are, just increasing, I'm on the cold front, and that's why I'm trying to move to preventative and proactive medicine to prevent it. But what is going to happen by like 2030?
Yeah. So I think the picture in the short term is very bad. I think the picture in the short term is very much a picture of class, social economic status, because healthy food is expensive and unhealthy food is cheap. Accessibility, food desert, I mean, you name it. I think the question is not whether the trend is bad. The trend is bad. I think the question is not whether it's getting worse. It is getting worse and will continue getting worse. I think the question is when will we wise up? How long will it take to wise up and do things? And it's not going to be easy because the health machinery has zero interest in preventative care. Actually, South Africa is, I think, the one exception to this. You have Discovery and Vitality, which kind of is a shining light in the world of thinking about preventative care, right? And really, there's nothing in the world as good as Vitality in terms of the real deep, complex way to try and get people to, get Apple Watches and run and eat healthier and so on. So I think from that perspective, South Africa is really kind of leading the world from that. But outside of that, nobody is truly interested in preventative care. At some point, we'll have to become interested, but how will it work out? And it's all tied up. I'll give you an example. In the US, every year people can move from one healthcare provider to another. So healthcare provider A saying, if I'll invest in people in preventative care, they will be cheaper. I'll spend all this money on them. They'll be cheaper. Somebody else would snatch them. Not going to do it. So, the machinery is very, very complex and it's not designed for prevention, but at some point we need to take care of it. Now, how long will it take? I think a while. I think the Republicans and the free market ideologists are more against it than the Democrats. So Trump being elected is probably going to slow it for a while, but I think it's unbelievably, and it's not just needed, by the way, from people getting sick. It's important for everything. Like, we want people to be productive. We want people to feel good. I mean, there's lots of value for society for people being healthy.
Thank you so much, Prof. Dan Ariely. It's been a privilege. Just want to declare favor and blessing over you. You've got another home in South Africa to come and stay with us, a nice Cypriot Greek family here, and love your work, love your books. And I think possibly there's a book in you with regards to health transformation and sustainably transforming people's behaviors and life, possibly. I think we need that more and more. There's a lot of general behavioral sort of science books out there, but I think specifically regarding health and wellness and performance, I think it's very much needed, because a lot of people are speaking about what to do, but the questions of why and how over time, I don't think are being addressed significantly. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. Lovely to talk to you, and looking forward to next time.